order. Welcome to meeting number 6 of the Procedure and House Affairs Committee. I'd like to start the meeting by providing you with some information following the motion that was adopted in the House on Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020. The committee is now sitting in a hybrid format, meaning that members can participate either in person or by video conference. Witnesses must always appear by video conference. All members, regardless of the method of participation, will be counted for the purpose of quorum. The committee's power to sit is, however, limited by the priority use of the House of Commons resources, which is determined by the party whips. All questions must be decided by a recorded vote unless the committee disposes of them with the unanimous consent or on division. And finally, the committee may deliberate in camera, provided that it takes into account the potential risks to confidentiality inherent in such deliberations with remote participants. Today's proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website, and a reminder that the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee or what you may be seeing in grid view format on your screen. To ensure an orderly meeting, I'd like to outline a few rules to follow. For those participating virtually, members and witnesses may speak in either official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor English or French. At the beginning, when we started virtual meetings, we were having to switch between English and French. So I believe that issue has been corrected, and you can truly choose either floor English or French now, and there should not be an issue with the interpretation's sound or volume level. Before speaking, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and when you're done speaking, please put your mic on mute to minimize any interference. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. Should a member need to request the floor outside of their designated speaking time for questions, they should activate their mic and state that they have a point of order. And if members wish to intervene on a point of order, please use the raise hand function. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. And unless there are exceptional circumstances, the use of headsets with a boom mic is mandatory for all participating remotely. Should any technical challenges arise, please advise the chair. Please note that we may need to suspend for a few minutes to ensure that all members are able to participate fully. For those participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in the committee room. Should you wish to get my attention, signal me with a gesture or call out my name. Should you wish to raise a point of order, wait for the appropriate time to indicate that you have a point of order. The clerk and I will try to keep a consolidated speaking list order. And without further ado, let's welcome our fantastic witnesses that we have before committee today. We've been watching you through our television screens, and I'm sure maybe some members have been able to meet you personally as well, depending on what province they're from. So welcome to Dr. Bonnie Henry, the Provincial Health Officer from British Columbia. And then also Barbara J. Raymond, the Executive Medical Advisor, Vice President's Office for Infectious Disease Prevention and Control Branch of the Public Health Agency of Canada. Each of you will have 5 minutes for introductory remarks. And after that, we will have a few rounds of questions from our committee members. And so please go ahead. Dr. Bonnie Henry.
Thank you and good morning. I just want to start by acknowledging that I am speaking to you today from the traditional territories of the Coast Salish, the Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh Nations here in Vancouver, and I'm very grateful to be able to speak to you from these beautiful territories. So we've been asked, I guess, to talk about elections, and as you know, we have just completed one, although the final vote is not yet in, given the election legal premise out here that you need to wait a certain amount of time for counting of the ballots. We've learned quite a lot. I think the biggest thing that we've learned is connecting early and often. As where I come from in Prince Edward Island, we say that about voting, but vote early and vote often. But out here, we met with Elections BC starting in March. There were actually scheduled elections meant to happen in March, and we, on my advice, postponed those given the situation we were dealing with at the time. But we have continued to meet to answer a number of questions. And particularly, we developed a very detailed guidance, and that was very helpful. We met a number of times with Elections BC, but also had sessions, question and answer sessions, and detailed sessions with all of the electoral officers from each of the 87 electoral districts around BC. We did Zoom meetings on those, and those were also very helpful. As I'm sure will be the same for federal elections, many of the people who work on elections are older and in a demographic where they're concerned about their own health and COVID in particular. So we were able to allay fears and make sure that we had all of the processes in place, and we have detailed guidance on that, which we're helpful. We're happy to share. The other thing that I think was really important was we met with, there's an all-party committee that is involved with, this is my not understanding the political part of things, but it's the political parties have a committee that is around elections, and we met with them a number of times to make sure that each party had guidance about how they could conduct campaigns safely during COVID. So we talked about things like going door to door and what would that look like, and how to have smaller gatherings, not allowing large groups together, wearing of masks, all of those things that are important, and how to campaign safely during this period of time as well. I think that the three things that were most important, that allowing the ability to mail in ballots was really helpful, both for the public, but also for elections people who work in the elections. There was all kinds of questions about, what if somebody licks the ballot, the envelope, does that mean it's safe? And we talked a lot about, washing your hands. Um, we also had extended advanced polls and made sure that they were over the weekends. And that becomes really important because there was a lot of concern. Many voting places are schools. Schools are just designed to be very easy. People can be indoors, you can separate them. They have gyms or other large spaces. So for the teachers and students, because our schools are back in, to feel that they were being respected and safe, it was important to have those places available on the weekends and to have other places during the week, because we didn't want people mixing with the students and the teachers in the class in the school setting. So extending our advanced polls for longer a period of days and over weekends was important. And we switched the voting day. It normally would be a Tuesday, and it was switched to a Saturday. And I think that that proved as well to be really beneficial in a number of ways. One, it meant that we could use voting places like schools again, but it also meant that people who would normally be at work on election day were able to work in some of the voting stations. So we had a broader swath of people who were available to work. There was also, Anton Bogman, who's our Chief Electoral Officer here in British Columbia, can give you many of the details, but we reduced from two people sitting at a table to one, and that worked very efficiently. We had provisions for being able to put plexiglass barriers in, and people could hold their ID up. And so there's lots of details that made it very efficient and very safe. And we had very few. We had lots of people voted, although I understand it was one of the lowest turnouts that we've had. But it was all done safely. There was no incidents that we were aware of, and it was really a matter of walking through all of the possibilities ahead of time and making sure that people were confident in being able to do it safely.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Henry. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Dr. Barbara Raymond, please. And Dr. Barbara Raymond has also circulated opening remarks to all the committee members if you wish to follow along with those as well. Go ahead, Dr. Raymond.
Just one moment, I'm having trouble accessing my documents. Here we go. Madam Chair, I'm pleased to return to this committee. I appeared before you last April, a mere lifetime ago. But today I'm here to respond to your questions related to holding safe elections in our current COVID-19 environment. There is no doubt holding elections in the COVID-19 context presents unique challenges. The protection of Canadian voters, communities, as well as Elections Canada staff and volunteers are key concerns. To this end, the Public Health Agency of Canada, or PHAC, has been engaging with Elections Canada to support their planning efforts for an election during a pandemic. Guidance, tools, and advice based on best current scientific evidence, expert opinion, and public health practice have been shared with Elections Canada to assist them in determining what risks and mitigation strategies should be considered at election offices and at polling stations across Canada to prevent transmission of COVID-19. I will note that there is no one-size-fits-all approach given the variability of COVID-19 epidemiology across the country. As a result, it is critically important for Elections Canada to be closely engaged with provincial and local public health authorities to ensure that their planning takes into account local regulations and guidance. To this end, PHAC has also helped to facilitate connections between Elections Canada and our provincial and territorial public health counterparts in order for that provincial and territorial advice and guidance to be incorporated into the federal planning. Working with the provincial and territorial public health authorities across Canada really will be crucial to determining how the national framework for elections can be adapted to the needs of each jurisdiction for safe elections. We are very fortunate to have Dr. Henry with us today. And I'm very anxious to hear of her lived experience with the election and hearing her advice as we go forward. And sadly, however, COVID-19 continues to have a significant impact on the lives of Canadians. It remains an unparalleled threat to the health, social, and economic well-being of Canadians and the global community. At this point in time, there are 26,687 active cases across the country. The latest national level data indicate daily averages of 2,747 new cases in the week of October 22nd to 28th. And close to 75,000 people were tested in the week of October 11th to 17th, with 3.1% of those testing positive. Outbreaks continue to contribute to the spread of COVID-19 in Canada. These vary in size from just a few cases to large clusters, occurring in a range of settings, including long-term care and assisted living facilities, schools, congregate living settings, industrial work settings, and large social gatherings. The number of people experiencing severe illness continues to increase. Provincial and territorial data indicate that an average of 1,095 people with COVID-19 were being treated in Canadian hospitals each day during the most recent 7-day period for which we have data, October 22nd to 28th, including 228 of whom were in ICU beds. During the same period, there were unfortunately an average of 29 COVID-19 related deaths reported daily. And sadly, as hospitalizations and deaths tend to lag behind increased disease activity by 1 to several weeks, our concern is that we have yet to see the extent of the severe impacts that are associated with the current ongoing increase in COVID-19 disease activity through Canada. So, though we are COVID fatigued, we must continue to sustain our collective efforts to bring the infection rate down to manageable levels. Public health cannot do this alone. It requires sustained effort from each one of us. And we must continuously and consistently maintain effective public health practices. Stay home if we have symptoms, even mild ones. Wash our hands frequently, maintain physical distancing, and wear a face mask as appropriate. I would like to highlight the unprecedented coordination amongst federal, provincial, and territorial governments, which has allowed us to make the progress that we have in terms of implementation of robust public health and related response measures. We see the results of this work on a daily basis, and the core public health measures have become common features of our everyday life and everyday conversation. We continue to communicate daily to Canadians to make sure that they have the information that they need to protect themselves, to reduce the impact of the pandemic, and to help Canadians make informed decisions about safely participating in everyday life, including elections. The hard truth is, as said by Dr. Theresa Tam, the hard truth is that COVID-19 is still very much with us. We have got a long road ahead. So we are asking Canadians not to lose hope, to stay the course, and to keep being part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raymond and Dr. Henry. So just to remind all of the members that both witnesses are here to answer questions on public health considerations of conducting a federal election during the COVID-19 pandemic. So if we can keep our questions in relation to an election and try to get the best advice possible from these wonderful witnesses. And if Dr. Henry, if you could please, when you're speaking, try to speak a little bit closer. The interpreters are saying they're having a little bit of problem with your sound. We also have with us Ms. May. She visits us from time to time when we're doing some interesting studies. So welcome to you as well. And if any of the members wish to share some of their time with Ms. May, please let me know. We'll see if we can be efficient and we have some time before committee business starts today. We'll try to squeeze you in then if there's some extra time, but please let me know if you want to share. Thank you, Ms. May. Okay, we'll start with the first round of questions for 6 minutes with Ms. Vecchio, please.
And thank you very much. And thank you to both Dr. Henry and Dr. Raymond for joining us here today. I really want to focus a lot of my questions on seniors, not just the seniors that are in our long-term care facilities and palliative care, some of our vulnerable demographics also. But I want to look at the people that do work in the polls as well. As it was indicated, Dr. Henry, you mentioned, many of the poll workers are seniors. So I want to just start off with looking at the voters who are in long-term care homes. What are some of the suggestions that you have to make sure that we can enable them to vote while making sure that we protect them?
Sure, I'm happy to start with that. That was, of course, something that we were very concerned about. A couple of things. One, making sure they were able to vote, particularly people who were in long-term care or in hospital. So we did make particular provisions we had a couple of backup things that we could do. So one of them was ensuring that we had people trained in using personal protective equipment and were able to go into a long-term care home and facilitate people voting in the care homes. We also had the option of mail-in ballots that people could do within the care home as well or in hospital. and they would be collected from them. So they could do the ballot in their room, and rather than putting it in the mail, an electoral officer would go around and pick them up for them. The final thing that we had for people who couldn't do those was there's an option that they've put together here in British Columbia, and Anton would have the details of it, but it allows people to vote by phone. And it's a process that allows you to call into a specific number where your identification is confirmed, and then you're anonymously passed over to another person who takes your vote. So we had all of those in place to be able to support seniors in care homes, as well as people in hospital who were eligible to vote. So that was really helpful. In terms of seniors who were actively part of the teams, the electoral teams, we had quite a lot of we spent quite a bit of time with them going through the things that keep us safe and the barriers in place. So there was a lot of detail put into how the voting station, the voting places were set up, making sure there was particularly, plexiglass is our best friend, and lots of appropriate barriers. And we had to have scripts to talk to people about, it's our natural inclination to actually look around the barrier to talk to people. So there was, we educated people in line as they were waiting to go in to vote. We encouraged and made it not mandatory, but we had masks available for everybody. For everybody coming in to vote, we asked them to wear a mask. We said that was an expectation of people going into a voting place, and we had appropriate lines. So the voting stations were all separated and marked appropriately, so you came in one way, out the other. There was no mixing, and it actually worked very well. The seniors and others who were involved, they had access to PPE, so it was an additional expense, but everybody had access to masks and face shields. There was a lot of people who wanted to wear visors, particularly if they were monitoring people in line and those talking to people about how the process was going to work. So those were the basics.
Awesome. And sorry, Dr. Raymond, I just kind of, with Dr. Henry, I just wanted to ask a couple more questions on this. You talked about the mail-in ballots and that they are still being counted. Do you think by extending the period so that, because I'm looking at what's happening, every Canadian media is covering it right now, the U.S. election, and they're talking about the 71 million ballots that have been received. And we're seeing court injunctions that some people are going to be waiting 2 weeks, and some are saying the date of the election it has to be received. Do you believe that by extending the voting time, that this will be one of the things that will address this type of issue, is so that people will have more time to actually vote?
I'm not sure what you mean about extending the voting time. What we did was
extending it by a number of days, so perhaps going from 35 to 50 days. Do you think that is something that should be considered?
I don't actually have an opinion on that, to be honest. We had a set period of time that's a minimum that's in the law here. It was a relatively short period of time. Expanding the availability of advanced polls was really helpful. A lot of people voted in the advanced polls. The other thing is, for us, the ballots had to be received by 8 p.m. on election day, and they could be dropped off at many different places. But I know in the US, they can be received as long as they're mailed by election day. So those are things that you would have to think through. It is a quirk of the Elections Act here in BC that we have to wait 13 days before the mail-in ballots are counted. That is hopefully going to change. And the mail-in ballots in BC are all counted by hand. And that's one of the reasons why it takes quite a bit longer. And I know they are looking at how to speed up that process by doing it using electronic means, and that would be very helpful as well. So it depends on what systems you have in place to be able to efficiently count mail-in ballots.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we've got Dr. Duncan, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Doctors Henry and Raymond. Thank you for everything you're both doing to protect the health and safety of Canadians. Very grateful. I have many questions. I'm looking for very short answers, and most often a yes or no, if I may. I'll begin with Dr. Henry. Dr. Henry, did each political party develop a COVID safety plan for the BC election? Yes or no?
Yes, that is a requirement
Thank
in
you.
British Columbia.
Thank you. Was that mandated or agreed to by political parties?
It's mandated by me. I have a provincial health officer order in place that requires all organizations, businesses, and it was no exception for this.
Thank you. Did you review each of the plans, yes or no?
My office did.
Thank you. Did you make recommendations to strengthen the plans, yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you. You mentioned there was provincial health guidance for the election to keep communities, candidates, staff, volunteers safe during the election. Would you be willing to table that guidance with the committee, please?
The guidance, I would check with Elections BC. I'm sure they'd be happy to.
Thank you so much. Did local health units provide additional guidance, yes or no?
I don't know. Some of them probably did.
Okay.
I will say we don't have a local system here. We have a regional health system.
That's right.
So public health is regional as well.
Okay. Thank you. Could you table a comparison, if you're able to, of the guidance for a usual election side by side the guidance for this election?
You would have to ask Elections BC for that.
Okay. As of last night, sadly, there are close to 90 outbreaks in long-term care, for example, in my province of Ontario. Could you table with the committee what recommendations were made to ensure the health and safety of BC residents and staff of long-term care while ensuring their right to vote?
Again, that's part of our Elections BC plan.
Okay. Could you table with the committee the range of coronavirus cases during the election in BC, as well as the 7-day moving average of cases?
Yeah, that is publicly available on the bccdc.ca website. But we have a dashboard that's available there.
I'm aware of the dashboard. Could that information be provided to the committee?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. If I could go to Dr. Raymond, please. Dr. Raymond, would you be willing to table with the committee all consultations that have taken place with the provinces and territories regarding election planning, please?
I know that we have had conversations at the Special Advisory Committee table, and
Could you table the dates of those?
Yep, I believe it was September 1st, I recall, and I'm sure that would be not a problem.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raymond. Dr. Raymond, we've talked about this before. Do we have a complete picture of the number of coronavirus cases, or is there a 1 to 2 week delay between when people get sick and then when we have the information to PHAC? Is there a delay?
There is variability, yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Could you table with the committee, because to your point, there is regional diversity, and I'd like for that to be part of our study. So could you table with the committee the new number of cases today, the cumulative cases, percentage of positive tests, and the number per either 100,000 population or 1 million, whichever is easiest, for all the provinces and territories?
So that information is also available
I'm aware.
online, but yes, I'm sure that we could collate it and provide it.
That would be very helpful. Could you table how many outbreaks there are in Canada today? As you say, they range from a few number of cases to clusters. I think in Ontario, again, that's where I'm from, there were close to 100 new outbreaks last week. Could you table that with the committee, please?
Yes, I believe that information is also publicly available, but we can arrange for it to be collated.
Thank you. Is asymptomatic spread possible? Yes or no?
Yes.
Is pre-symptomatic spread possible? Yes or no?
Yes.
Is it possible to look at, say, our largest communities in the country, say the top 10, and table the same information I asked for the provinces, just so we can see, again, because we are looking at elections and a one-size approach is not going to fit all, to really show that regional variation. Would that be possible?
I'm sorry, for the city, top 10 city?
Yeah.
I am not sure that we have that level of detail at the fact level, but we can verify, and if it is available, certainly.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raymond and Dr. Henry.
Thank you. Next, we've got all the doctors in the room have got me going, but unless you want to correct me, Monsieur Terrien, you were up next for 6 minutes.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. No, I simply have a master's in economics. I'm not a doctor. Thank you for coming today. It's an honor to have you here. I'd like to start with Dr. Henry and then with Dr. Raymond. Telephone voting, mail-in votes. What would you say the main challenges were with those methods?
I actually think the mail-in voting worked really well. The challenge we have is the way the Elections Act is written here. There's a delay period where each individual, every single one of the mail-in ballots has to be verified, and there's a delay period before they can be counted. So with the large number that we have, we need to make that process more efficient. The telephone voting is very limited. So to be able to do that, it's not something that could be done for large numbers of people. So it was reserved for those people who couldn't vote any other way.
Est-ce que y avait les...
Could voters find out whether or not their votes had arrived in time? In other words, that they actually did count?
I don't know the answer to that question. I believe there was a process. I know there was some concerns with some of the envelopes, and the Elections BC was able to reassure people that that they were aware of some of the envelopes had become sealed before they were received by the voter, and there was concerns that they would look like they were tampered with. So Elections BC was able to address that issue. I don't know if they can tell an individual whether their individual package was obtained, but they do have a process that's quite rigorous to ensure that somebody doesn't vote twice. So if you voted on voting day and then a mail-in package, they can make sure that doesn't.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll come back to that issue later. Dr. Raymond, from what I understood, you give authority to provincial and territorial health agencies to a certain extent to provide advice and set conditions. Does that mean that you limited in what you can tell them to do yourself?
So the role of the public health agency is to provide guidance and advice. We do not specify or regulate or tell anyone what to do. And we do not surrender jurisdictions to the province and territories. The jurisdiction is theirs for public health within their jurisdictions. So we always engage. That's common practice in public health.
Okay.
Thank you. I understand. So Elections Canada is responsible for running the elections. They'll ask you for advice. But given that the pandemic has varied from province to province, they will also be allowing the provinces or asking the provinces to adapt to each of their situations. Am I correct?
Yes. Yes, essentially, we have, in many aspects of our lives, had to adapt our activities, and the recommendations that are in place in, say, St. John's, Newfoundland, are quite different than those that are in place in Toronto, Ontario, or in Vancouver, BC. So that is true. Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to ask your opinion about something. If the Public Health Agency's opinion or feeling is different from the provincial counterparts, I'd like to know what would happen. I'm not trying to lay blame anywhere. I'd just like to know how you resolve that.
I referenced earlier that there is a federal, provincial, territorial special advisory committee, or the SAC, that meets twice a week, and Dr. Henry is on that committee, as are the chief medical officers of health from all jurisdictions. I have to say that we have not encountered a situation where we have not been able to resolve a fundamental difference. I think there are general principles, and but we recognize that there are factors that will determine the implementation differently, and we respect that across jurisdictions.
Thank you. Now, in terms of rapid tests, it has started happening in Canada, and they've arrived in Quebec. What link would you say there would be between rapid testing and elections? How do you think those would be helpful? What kind of improvement do you think that would provide?
Mm-hmm. To be frank, the use of rapid testing for elections is not something that would necessarily be all that feasible at this moment in time, but it is an evolving development that could be considered as we move into the future. The important considerations are the availability and access to rapid testing, and whether that is in fact the best use of a scarce resource. But as I say, that is definitely something that would be evolving over time.
Thank you, Dr. Raymond. That's all the time we have for this questioner. Next, we've got Mr. Blakey.
Oh, thank you very much. I just want to start by saying thank you to you both for taking time out of your important work on behalf of Canadians to share some of that time with us here at committee. I wanted to ask, in the experience of Dr. Henry with the recent BC election, if you found that there were particular groups of people who, as a result of public health orders, faced particular barriers to voting. So I'm thinking of Indigenous communities that might have had a travel ban in place. I'm thinking of people living with disabilities, students who typically might vote on campus who may not have had the option. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to those kinds of particular demographic challenges and who was affected and what you learned in terms of how to mitigate some of those barriers to voting.
Yeah, so we did address some of those issues early on with Elections BC. Particularly with First Nations communities, we knew that several communities in the province had restrictions on people moving in and out of their jurisdictions because of the pandemic. And I know specific electoral officers were recruited from within the community to facilitate communities being able to safely vote. And that was done on a one-on-one basis with the communities. And it really speaks to the importance of early connection with public health, but also with communities to ensure that those needs are met. For many people, including students, people with disabilities, it was the mail-in ballots that were incredibly helpful for people. Also for people who didn't want to go out into the community because they perceived or they were themselves at risk. So the mail-in option was a really important one. And then for some people who were not able to leave their home and for whom mail-in ballots weren't an option, the telephone voting was put in place for those people, particularly for people with disabilities. We also, just a thought about it, we also had telephone voting available for people who were sick with COVID and who we would want to leave their home, and people who were in public health mandated quarantine.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Raymond, does the Public Health Agency of Canada foresee similar challenges? And if so, who are some of the groups, or what are some of the groups that you think Elections Canada ought to be thinking about how to facilitate their voting, because public health orders may present unique challenges to them?
Yes. So that has been a source or a topic of discussion, very much along the same lines of the groups that Dr. Henry has described, examining the safest way to permit everyone who is able and wanting to vote to do so. So those people who have limited mobility, who may be quarantined or isolated, who may be at high risk and therefore at home, individuals in long-term care or other types of congregate living settings. All of those have received consideration.
Thank you. And Dr. Henry, you mentioned that the political parties in BC had a kind of steering committee or an advisory committee on best practices or safe practices for campaigning. Would you consider the establishment of such a committee an election best practice from a public health point of view?
Yeah, so this is a standing committee that Elections BC has on an ongoing basis, and we use that platform to discuss the importance of having guidance around elections in a pandemic, and I do believe it would be a best practice, yes.
And is there a key set of kind of campaign activities that you think it's particularly important for political parties to discuss and ideally reach some kind of agreement on in terms of what the safest way to conduct campaign activity would be?
I do. I think that there was a lot of concern in communities that I was hearing about people going door to door, which is something that is part of political campaigning, I understand. But so there is alternative ways of doing that, and making sure that people knew that they could signal their concerns if they didn't want somebody to come to their door. That was one of the biggest things that people had. So we put out some guidance to support being able to campaign. A lot of people I know were doing it by phone or connecting remotely with people. The other one is about having rallies or some of the large get-togethers that are common during elections. So we have a limit on gatherings here in British Columbia, and it varies across the country, the number involved in gatherings. So we provided guidance around having them outside with small numbers, wearing masks, all of the other important things that we know work to protect people.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Raymond, again, are these things that are on the minds of people at the Public Health Agency of Canada when they think about the potential of us being in an election? And if so, what are some of the campaigning behaviors that FAC believes political parties ought to be talking about and establishing guidelines or best practices for prior to the beginning of an election.
Mm-hmm. So I believe
unfortunately, that's all the time we've got, Mr. Blakey. You're going to have to try to get that in at your next slot. Next, we've got Mr. Tucker for 5 minutes, please.
Yes, and thank you to our witnesses for appearing today. I've got a few questions. Just to carry on what my honorable member from the block was asking about rapid testing, and I guess this would be more for Dr. Henry, was there a plan, if we had rapid testing, would you have had that available for key members on your staff? And outside the fact that we don't have rapid testing approved in Canada, did you have a way to get test results back quicker for those key members to make sure that the election occurred as smoothly as possible?
The short answer is no. People who had symptoms, who were concerned about COVID-19, we have our testing strategy has always been to test people who have symptoms in BC. So there was a process, and it was available to everybody.
Okay, and back to a little bit of the timeline that you laid out, that there was, I guess the election was supposed to be held in March, and then under your recommendation that it wasn't safe or we didn't know enough about the virus at the time. I'm assuming here paraphrasing, but please correct me if I'm wrong there. And then 7 months later, you felt that it was safe enough to recommend election to the premier that it could be done in a safe manner. Is that a correct?
That's not correct. No. I do not recommend anything to the premier. The political decisions are made by the political people. What my relationship and my purpose is to provide the health advice to Elections BC about how to carry out an election safely. And Elections BC has the ability to postpone or stop an election if they have concerns, and they consult it with us because there were by-elections. There was municipal elections actually that were meant to occur in March. And at that time, it was right at the time where we, as you said, did not understand what was happening. And we had a rapid surge of cases, and we were trying to manage the pandemic. So my advice to Elections BC was that the by-elections, the municipal elections that were meant to happen on March 14th be postponed. The decision to call an election is not mine. It's not Elections BC. It's with the political parties, and I did not provide, and nor was I asked for advice, nor would I expect to be asked for advice on calling an election.
So just to confirm, the premier never talked to you about holding an election during the pandemic directly?
No, he did not.
Okay. So I'd like to ask Dr. Raymond about, I believe the one line asked about not to lose hope. And in your statement, what would that people that right now, if we go into the election federally and people are in quarantine without some of the measures that the BC elections people vote, then those people in quarantine or in the hospital would have their rights as a voter diminished. How would that not lose hope? And I know that's kind of a partisan question and more so for parliamentarians, but from a health standpoint, it's can you see the risks of an election changing people's hopes, perhaps on the pandemic, like as we go through the fatigue almost of COVID-19? There's got to be a breaking point. Is there concerns that this could be the breaking point?
I mean, that's an interesting question. Well, to start, I don't envision a scenario where Canadians would be deprived of their right to vote. I think every possible contingency and plan is being put into place to enable that to happen. I think it is a challenging time right now. We are on a long road, and I say it's the long and winding road, so I at least hear the theme music, but it's also getting colder and darker, and it's very important for each and every one of us to try to maintain that hope and to try to be a bit of light in the darkness on the road rather than a doomsayer, you know, screaming that the end is nigh, just around the next bend. So I do not think Canadians should lose hope. I think Canadians should be exceptionally proud of how far we have come and how hard we have worked to get here. There is no shame in being fatigued. It has been a long haul. I look at Bonnie Henry, and I know how hard she's been working. I know that I've been at this since December 31st. It is tiring, but I am more proud and hopeful for Canadians. I think Canadians have demonstrated great resilience and great capacity, um, and I have no doubt that they're going to continue on the road and that we are going to come to the end and it's going to be the sunny day. But, there's a slog ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Turnbull.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. And I want to thank you, Dr. Raymond and Dr. Henry, for the exceptionally important work that you do to protect the health and safety of Canadians. And I know that hope, that force of hope, is truly a powerful force in people's lives. So we shouldn't lose sight of that. And thank you for being here, both of you. I have a few questions. I'll start with Dr. Raymond. You mentioned in your opening remarks that you've been engaging, or that the Public Health Agency of Canada has been engaging with Elections Canada. And I understand that your role is to provide expert opinion, advice, evidence on public health practices related to understanding the risks and mitigation strategies. Could you table with this committee some of those engagements in terms of a timeline, and perhaps some of the risks and mitigation strategies that have been recommended? I think it would be really helpful for us in this study.
Certainly, I believe we can share some of the chronology of engagement. It's been ongoing. And there are formal sort of engagement meetings, and then there are numerous calls and informal consultations, but sure, we will do our best on that. And in terms of advice provided, I would say that the bulk of advice provided is consistent with our existing guidance and so forth, perhaps customized a little bit or applied situationally, but that's all available as well.
Okay, great. So if you're willing to table that, that would be really helpful. I think the timeline and the amount of communication happening is certainly comforting for me and builds confidence in the Elections Canada process. So thank you for that. Another question for you, Dr. Raymond. I know the COVID Alert app is fully functional here in Ontario and is available in many other provinces. And it's a very helpful tool, I think, to let people know if they've been exposed to COVID-19. So I wonder if you could speak to the importance of this app and the exposure notification in limiting the spread of the infection and preventing future outbreaks.
So the COVID Alert app is one tool, right? It's one tool in our toolbox. One additional measure that we have implemented in an attempt to reach out and increase the number of people who may be aware that they've been unknowingly exposed. It has certainly its areas of applicability, but I would like to highlight that this is a relatively new app as well. And we are really starting to see increased takeoff in the uptake with it, and starting to see a value benefit for individuals who are using it. And we are encouraging all who wish to use it. It's an interesting tool because essentially it again is sort of a social contract. So it's a person sharing their information in a safe and confidential and anonymous way to help others. And so I think of it as a very Canadian approach. So yeah, but it's one tool. It's not the only. It's not the yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's not the only tool, but it's an important tool in our toolbox to help mitigate the risks. So thank you for that testimony. I appreciate that. Dr. Henry, you had mentioned in your remarks that you had, I think, effectively allayed some of the fears of the general public in the election in BC. How did, what were the key factors in allaying those fears? I think that's certainly a concern that I have in terms of voter turnout, that there's a general fear out there. So was Elections BC responsible for working with you on that? Was it a public health initiative? Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Sure. We work closely with Elections BC, and Anton Bogman, the Chief Electoral Officer, and I did a press briefing, but we also made it available publicly, the work that we were doing together, the fact that we had guidance in place. And really, it is about making sure that we can carry on these important functions safely, and reassuring people that we could, making sure there were options for people who didn't feel comfortable going to a voting place, making sure the voting places themselves were run as efficiently as possible and had the precautions in place that worked. So being open about that and telling people, letting people know what precautions were in place was very effective.
Thank you. Monsieur Terrien, 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to speak to Dr. Henry about voting by phone and by mail. I've been involved in several election campaigns, and at times people have contacted us to tell us that their vote had been stolen. Someone else had voted instead of them. Now, mistakes can happen, but I'd like to know if you've ever received those kinds of complaints. That is, that through phone voting or mail-in voting, have there been more complaints than otherwise?
So I think, Mr. Terrien, you need to ask Elections BC that question. I provide public health advice about how to do it safely. The running of the election is the responsibility of Elections BC.
Comprends?
I understand. However, wouldn't it be of interest to you to know about this because you provide advice to electoral officers? And we're in a rather unique situation here, so it might be good to be able to learn from these experiences. Do you not think that information would help you check to see whether techniques that are being used now are appropriate and what we could do to improve them?
Absolutely. If there was concerns that because of health reasons, there was an increase in voter fraud, then Elections BC would let me know that. But I have no indication of that from this election.
Donc,
then perhaps it actually wasn't the case if you haven't heard about it. But you didn't yourself look into that, did you? And you weren't asked for that information.
The safe running of elections and elections fraud is all, the health aspects of a safe running of election was what my job is. Elections BC is very focused on making sure that everybody can vote and that their right to vote is protected and that voter fraud is detected and managed. And I can certainly ask the question of Elections BC, but I have no indication that there was any increase or change or any concerns around voter fraud.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blakey, for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask, in both your opinion, kind of what the public health impacts or risks are of kind of spontaneous or snap election beginnings, as opposed to having more certainty around the windows within which an election might begin. Does that make no difference at all in terms of public health risks, or does it present additional challenges beyond the types of challenges you would expect with a fixed election date?
Well, let me start by saying, we were very aware early on that we had a minority parliament or legislature in BC. So we were prepared. We had a minority both provincially and federally, as you know. So we had prepared early on. So I can't speak to in theory, we had fixed election days here in British Columbia, but recognizing that with a minority government, elections could happen at any time, it meant that we needed to prepare.
And in the opinion of the Public Health Agency of Canada, are there any additional risks or challenges posed by uncertainty about when an election might begin, as opposed to a context where there is certainty?
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to tell you that it sort of strikes me as more of a logistical challenge from the Elections Canada point of view. But in light of the preparedness work that they have done, in light of the experience that has been gained in a couple of by-elections in Toronto and our provincial colleagues, I think it's entirely feasible, although I'm sure it will be a challenge. Yeah.
I think we've heard pretty clearly in the testimony that there's an onus on the part of elections officials and public health officials to be ready for an election if political circumstances produce one. I'm wondering if, in your opinion, there's any onus in the other direction, particularly in a minority parliament context for politicians to be aware of the public health context and whether that should inform their behavior or not.
I would say that we expect our public leaders, our public politicians, our MPs, our elected officials, to always, whenever possible, exemplify the kind of behaviors that we are encouraging Canadians to take. So
thank you, Dr. Raymond. Next for 5 minutes, we've got Mr. Doherty.
Thank you, Chair. I first want to say thank you to our guests that are here today. Dr. Henry, as a fellow British Columbian, I'm very proud of your leadership that you've shown from day one during this pandemic. I know it hasn't been easy on you, but your measured approach, I'm sure it's owed to your military background. I've had the opportunity to speak publicly in the House about your leadership, and I just wanted to take this opportunity right before we start to just to give a heartfelt thank you. You know, our province has weathered the storm to this point. We are undergoing obviously a second wave here, but I think British Columbians owe a debt of gratitude to you and the work that you've done. You've communicated very well and in a measured approach, so thank you. Dr. Raymond, I have a question for you. We have petitioned Dr. Tam as a witness. Are you appearing on behalf of Dr. Tam?
I am appearing on behalf of the Public Health Agency of Canada, which would be Dr. Tam as well, yes.
Okay. Will we expect to see Dr. Tam before the committee, or are we? Is your appearance going to be the only one that we get?
I am not sure, but I think I might be as good as it gets. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you've done her well. Dr. Henry, was it your testimony that this was the lowest voter turnout that we've seen as a province?
That's what I understand. Yeah, that it was 52% or something,
Okay.
which I was actually surprised at, given the number of people who went to advance polls and the number of mail-in ballots that we received.
Was it your testimony that the Premier didn't consult you before he called the election, or did you have any advance notice?
I did not have any advance notice.
If he had, and I know that you had said that it's not in your position to provide advice, but would you have advised against it?
It is not my position to provide advice around those issues, and my sole focus is to ensure that we can carry out the necessary functions that we have in our democracy in a safe way.
Now, you spoke to the committee and mentioned about our regional health authority system that we have here in British Columbia. Do you have an elections readiness committee based out of all the regional health authorities and yourself?
No, we didn't have an elections readiness committee in public health. My office had been working very closely, as this is a provincial issue, and my office is the provincial body. So working very closely with Elections BC, as I mentioned, from March, when there was concerns raised from Elections BC.
As it stands today, with our increasing numbers, would it be safe to launch a 5-week election, in your opinion?
I think with the measures that we had in place, we could safely have an election at any time during this pandemic. At this point where we know what we know what safety measures need to be in place.
Are there things that you would do differently?
Well, from a health perspective, I think we covered all the bases. It's a challenge with the way the Elections Act is, that there is this period of time, and that before the counting of the mail-in ballots, and I'm sure Elections BC would have things to say about that.
Dr. Raymond, would you be aware of if the Prime Minister has consulted yourself or Dr. Tam on the potential snap election?
Mm-hmm. So Dr. Tam briefed Prime Minister and the Cabinet on a regular basis. I'm not privy to what is said in those meetings. I can tell you that if Dr. Tam were posed the question, I'm confident that she would be very careful, as Dr. Henry has alluded to, in terms of outlining and providing advice, or saying what considerations need to be taken into account. But I would be surprised if she were to give that sort of advice. It wouldn't be consistent with her. And Elections Canada is our interlocutor. That's who we work with, and that's who I assume the Prime Minister works with. But there's no direct contact between the agency and the Prime Minister.
Now, thank you for that. As a Beatles fan, I appreciate your Beatles reference to the long and winding road. And I just want to clarify, I believe my colleague Daniel Blakey had asked you this question, but in your opinion...
Sorry, Mr. Doherty, your time is up. I think I lost track a little bit there. Sorry about that. Next, we've got Mr. Alghabra.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to the witnesses. And I do want to echo what our colleagues have said. My deep gratitude and appreciation to both of you, Dr. Henry and Dr. Raymond, for the work that you've done over the last 7 months. I can't even imagine how demanding it's been, how many sleepless nights and long hours. And I know you also have teams that are working with you and who are also equally working hard. So I do want to acknowledge and appreciate your work. And this is a good segue for my other statement, is that one of the things I really adore about our institutions is the separation between politics and government institutions, including public health advice. And unlike what we're seeing in some other countries, we have resisted at times. Maybe it wasn't that easy, but we have resisted at the political level to avoid the politicization of public health advice and the role of public health into the public square. And that's why I think it's really important, while both of you and your agencies are working closely with Elections Canada or Elections BC, but also that the Premier or the Prime Minister avoids the appearance of politicization, the timing of election, and drag you into the timing of an election. Can you just imagine what that would imply? So I'm grateful, as I said, and maybe Dr. Henry, if you allow me to ask a question, the BC election, as you said, has just wrapped up, although they're still counting some votes, but it's been ongoing for several weeks. Has there been any reports of spread or transmission at polling stations or because of the election process?
Yeah, and I can say quite equivocally no. We have been monitoring that carefully. We were looking for any challenges that arose, and we had contact with the electoral offices about that, and we have had no concerns with the conduction of the voting.
And again, the other question to you, Dr. Henry, is can you describe to the committee the relationship that you had with BC elections? Was it a formal weekly meetings, or was it informal? Can you just describe to us the interaction before and throughout the election period?
Yeah, so they reached out to my office in March, and we met. So my one of my colleagues, Dr. Brian Emerson, was the primary contact, and we had discussions with them by phone, by email, at least weekly through this entire period. They had very detailed plans and thought through concerns in some detail. We provided advice to them on that. We had several meetings by Zoom with the electoral officers from all of the electoral districts, as well as with as I mentioned, the party committee, the all-party committee that developed the guidance for conduction of the campaign. We met, I believe, 2 or 3 times with them. So, it was not formal in that we didn't have terms of reference, etc., but we did meet regularly and had an ongoing back and forth around questions and guidance as needed.
Did you have any officers or employees of your agency visit election polls or inspect them, etc.?
We had the opportunity for that if it was needed, and we provided advice, and I did vote myself. So we all, we were certainly aware, but we didn't do formal inspections. No.
This is a question for both of you. Our task here at committee for this study is to provide guidance to the returning officer for Elections Canada on guidelines for an upcoming election whenever it happens under the pandemic circumstances. So do you have any advice for us on what should we provide as guidance to Elections Canada or to the public?
I'm certainly willing to start. I think having very detailed plans about how electoral places will work, but I would also suggest that it would be helpful for the committee to provide recommendation to parties about how to campaign safely. That was something that the public appreciated, and the fact that we were able to ensure that they all had plans that were reasonable was something that supported the election happening safely.
Thank you, Dr. Henry. Mr. Lukiski for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank to both Dr. Raymond and Dr. Henry for being here. I appreciate that very much. Many of my colleagues have gone over a lot of the ground and asked questions that I was going to ask, although I do have a couple. But before I get into those, just to satisfy my own curiosity, if nothing else, I'd like to get a couple of questions out to both of you, starting with Dr. Henry. Dr. Henry, how long have you been in your current position?
I was appointed as the provincial health officer in February of 2018.
And since you say you were appointed, I assume then there is a term that you have been appointed to. Could you tell us what that term is, or is it unlimited?
No, it's unlimited until my position is an independent position, but obviously it's an order in council position, so I serve at the pleasure.
No end term to your position?
No, my predecessor was in it for almost 20 years.
Well, I think I'm quite on safe ground to say that I'm sure that most British Columbians are very happy to hear that you'll be with us, hopefully, for a very, very long time. You've done an outstanding job to underscore what my colleague, Mr. Doherty, has already said, so thank you so much for that. Dr. Raymond, same question. When were you first appointed to your position? If you were appointed.
Yes, I'm not sure if I'm appointed or not, but I am an executive with the Public Health Agency of Canada, and I've been in a range of positions there since 2009. I joined at the time of the H1N1 pandemic, so it's come full circle.
Thank you very much. Now, specifically, Dr. Henry, you talked about the campaign, the recent campaign in British Columbia, and that there's a steering committee that met with all political parties to discuss health protocols for campaigns. Could you tell us whether or not there were any, I'm trying to choose my words carefully, were there any absolutes that you gave? In other words, were it mainly guidelines that you suggested to campaigns, or were there any absolutes such as candidates must wear masks when door knocking, or candidates must ensure that all election propaganda or pamphlets were duly sanitized before dropping them off at households? Could you explain a little bit exactly how strict or how absolute the instructions and or guidelines that you gave to campaigns would be?
So they were guidelines, but they were aligned with the guidance that we're providing in BC. So there are public health orders that must be followed, and that orders, for example, around gatherings. So the maximum was 50 if you were in a space that allowed for physical distancing, as well as other measures that were in place. So those are absolutes. And the guidance was around wearing of masks, the number of people together who were going door to door if they were going to do that, how the number of people who could be in a campaign office, the hierarchy of controls and guidance around things like physical distancing, barriers, use of PPE.
Did you, during the recent campaign, do any kind of a follow-up to ensure that all candidates and campaigns were following the health protocols that you had established?
So we didn't do a formal inspection, for example, but we were monitoring how campaigns were being run to see if there was anything, and as well as we have a complaints-based process. So if the public had concerns about things that were happening, we received emails about that, or phone calls, or they went to the local public health agencies. There were very few of those. The campaign was run by all parties in accordance with the guidelines for the most part.
So it would be safe to say then, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, you were satisfied that all candidates and campaigns ran their campaigns either individually or collectively in complete adherence to the health protocols that you had established?
Yeah, I cannot say that it was complete adherence, because I didn't measure completeness, but we did not receive a large number of complaints, and we understood that the campaigns were run in accordance with the guidelines. Yes.
Thank you. My final question then again to Dr. Henry. You had mentioned that the voter turnout in British Columbia, to your knowledge at least, has been the lowest perhaps in history. And to me, it speaks to the fact that since the voter turnout for advance polls and mail-in balloting was extraordinarily high, that a number of people didn't go out in person to vote, perhaps because of safety concerns. Do you think it would be worthwhile for your agency during an election period to put out public service announcements ensuring that the public was confident in the safety protocols that had been established to give them confidence that voting in person would be as safe and secure as possible?
We are out of time and overtime, Mr. Lukiski. Next is Mr. Garrettson for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to both of our witnesses for being here. I will start with Dr. Henry. Thank you for your service, and I think it's worth putting on the record that the New York Times referred to you as one of the most effective public health officials in the world. Quite an honor to receive from the New York Times, I would imagine. You talked a little bit about mail-in ballots, and in response to some of the questions from Mr. Therier in particular, I understand that you don't want to get into the politics of mail-in ballots, and I completely respect that. But from a public health perspective, do you consider mail-in ballots and phone-in voting and options like those as public in the interest of public health?
I think they were important in the context that we were in, where some people quite rightly had concerns about going out and their past experience of waiting in lines and being in contact with people during elections. So I do believe they were important options.
And may I ask, as the public health official for the area, was any information reported back to you that would suggest that there was fraudulent activities with either of those two?
No.
Okay. Going on, I just want to reference a Globe and Mail story where it was quoted that it was of your opinion that, and I'll quote the article here, Provincial Health Officer Bonnie Henry said Thursday that there have been no COVID-19 cases linked to any campaign-related activities, despite a continuing rise in the daily number of new infections in the province over the month-long campaign, end quote. I know Mr. Alghabra asked you a similar question on this vein, but can you confirm once again that quote from the Globe and Mail is accurate?
It is accurate. We do case follow-up on every single case of COVID-19 in the province and our contact tracing, so we have a sense of where people have been exposed. And I have there's been no reports to me from anywhere in the province that people have been exposed at election events.
Okay, thank you. Ms. or Dr. Raymond, jumping over to you for a second. In an iPolitics article on April the 23rd, you said that it could be difficult to conduct a federal election during a campaign. I want to quote you as what it says in the article. It says, quote, "I would recommend taking whatever measures we could to avoid creating a condition where we increase the risk of transmission for mass gatherings or large gatherings, or an obligation for people to gather together where they possibly can't maintain social distancing." Now, I realize that this is in the beginning of the pandemic. There's a lot going on. We still hadn't learned a lot. We've since had elections since then. Would you like to provide an update to that comment at this time?
I think I would still, I would not like to see us create circumstances that would facilitate the further transmission of COVID-19. But I would say that I am not I don't necessarily believe that an election per se would create those circumstances. We are in a very different place on the road now than we were back then. And we are very much now in the space of living with this.
Mhm.
And because avoiding it is apparently not an option.
Not an option. And yes, we certainly have learned a lot since then. I believe the President of the United States said it would be over by Easter, but it wasn't. But nonetheless, is it safe to say that it is your opinion that an election can be held in a safe manner during a pandemic like this? It is possible to put the measures in place to make that happen?
I believe it is possible, and I believe that we have examples of that happening in several jurisdictions across the country.
Again, thank you both for coming today.
Thank you. Monsieur Terrien, 2.5 minutes.
Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un?
Has anyone offered time to our colleague from the Green Party?
No, not as of yet.
C'est ce que je vais.
Well, that's what I'm going to do then. I'm giving my time to the member from the Green Party.
That's very generous of you. I was trying to figure out how to squeeze it in at the end. Thank you.
Thank you.
Some of our time later. I just want it to be known that we wanted to be equally nice.
Yeah, thank you. I'm switching to my English channel to ask Dr. Bonnie Henry some questions. As a British Columbian, I hope you know that my deep respect for you was manifested in leaving you alone when we were both on Galliano at the same time. I figured if anyone's more tired than me, it's you. So my questions, I'll try to be concise because some of them have been canvassed, and I recognize BC elections is still going to be grappling with some things. I'm getting reports from all over where people feel that they tried to vote by mail. They're not sure that vote got counted. They're still trying to figure out if their ballot was received. So there are questions here. But I wanted to track and see if this can be a public health question. Is it likely, because we did have historic low voter turnout, and and we did see through the election period an increase in the incidence of COVID. I mean, compared to New Brunswick, where when Blaine Higgs called his election, British Columbia's COVID rate was at that time 6 times higher than New Brunswick. And I think as politicians, particularly those who are looking to the main play to move from a minority to a majority government, it looks like sort of quote unquote, it works. And I'm very nervous about that because I think we're taking risks. And as COVID rates go up and as we're in a second wave, I just wonder if you have any public health perspectives on how likely it is that people did, or whether you have evidence that people just felt they didn't want to participate in an election because of COVID.
Yeah, it's a very challenging question, and I don't have an answer to that. I know that there's a lot of polling that's happening and there are many different reasons why people didn't go to or didn't vote. I have no specific knowledge that people were not voting because they felt it was unsafe.
And Dr. Henry, I do want to confirm as a British Columbia voter that I found the experience of voting, as you described it, extremely well run and quite COVID secured. My friend Todd is nodding as well. We both voted in BC, and my experience of voting was that it was very safe. My experience of campaigning was I had less confidence. Now, we were very careful. I campaigned, obviously, with Green Party colleagues. And we were in masks and at 6-foot distance, but I did observe conduct that was, I would say, risky that I saw during the campaign. I won't say from home, but just I didn't feel confident that the campaigning process was as secure as the voting process. Can you imagine for one moment if we had had a politician in British Columbia who was the BC version of Donald Trump? How would public health officials have contained that risk?
Yeah, very good question.
I think that's all the time we have. It's kind of a rhetorical question in a way, too, I think.
No, not really.
No.
Thank you. Merci, mon collègue.
I was wondering, we're very close to the end time, but if we could squeeze Mr. Blakey in just for the 2.5 minutes, and then we would move into committee business. Is that okay with all the committee members?
Good.
Okay, Mr. Blakey, 2.5 minutes, and then we will end our formal portion of the meeting with our witnesses and move into our committee business discussion. Thank you.
I was going to say, I know that the pandemic is grim, but I'm with Dr. Raymond. I don't think it's the end times. I just actually, I think Ms. May posed an excellent question. I was disappointed there wasn't time to answer. So Dr. Henry, if I could, I'll just let you avail yourself of some of my time in order to provide an answer to a question that I did not take to be rhetorical at all.
It would be the same as we do for any other person or organization or group. So we do have the ability to enforce public health measures, whether that, we have not taken an enforcement first approach in British Columbia, and we do encourage and believe that most people are doing the right thing, and it would be on a complaint basis. But if we saw that people were engaging in risky behavior, then we have measures that we can take to deal with that. It's challenging to know. I think most people want to do the right thing, and I think the important thing is having clear guidance about what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and then parties holding each other accountable for making sure they're following those guidance. And I am very thankful that we don't have that type of political rhetoric around the important measures that we need to take to prevent the transmission of this virus in Canada. And I'll just stop by saying, Sheila Rogers said this to me when we were talking the other day, that, the road this is not a bump in the road. This is the road. And we need to learn to walk on it over the next coming months and potentially years. And that's where we need to have our social contract here in Canada so that we can keep each other safe and can still fulfill these important parts of our society and our democracy.
Well, thank you very much. I think that's an excellent note to end on.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you both
Blakey.
again for your testimony.
Point of order, Chair. Point of order,
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. And just a quick ask, I suppose. There was a couple of times during our questions and answer periods where questions were asked of our witnesses, but there was not time enough for the answers. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, particularly my question to Dr. Henry about what advice you might give as to enacting a public service announcement campaign to assure voters during a pandemic election that it was safe to go out and vote. I'd like to hear that answer, and I think it would be helpful for our committee that we could include that perhaps in our report, our final report to the federal government. So if there are any answers that were not given because of time constraints, I would ask that the witnesses who appeared before us today provide those answers in writing to our clerk so we can have them included in our final report.
Would there be, I guess, we can have the clerk maybe clarify what a couple of those questions were. Would the witnesses be able to provide answers?
Yes? Madam
Okay.
Chair,
Yeah.
I would have to look at the transcript once the transcript is out by the end of the day or tomorrow, and I could get back to the witnesses with what those questions were to facilitate a written response from them.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lukiski. And thank you to our witnesses for doing a fantastic job. And I guess I stand corrected. It wasn't a rhetorical question, but it was a tough one. And you did a great job in answering that. I guess it's hard for me to fathom that we would have the type of political climate that we're having down south. But, you never know. And you have done a fantastic job answering all of the committee's questions. So thank you so much. We know it's a busy time for you and has been for a long time now. And thank you for helping us walk that road together throughout this pandemic. You've been great. Thank you. And I guess you can log off if you're able to, and the rest of the committee members, if you can stay logged in with your screens on. Okay, I just wanted to move to Okay, we've got a few things on the go right now. I'm wondering, I don't know how much we'd get done in committee business today, but whether you'd like to set a meeting for the subcommittee on the agenda so that we can maybe chart in or properly mark out our different days, at least from now through Christmas, because there are a couple of things on the go. I don't know if Mr. Doherty, you wish to move your motion that you've put on notice?
Yes, I would, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I move that the committee schedule the following appearances before November 27th, 2020. At least 1 hour with the Speaker of the House of Commons and senior officials of the House of Commons administration in respect of the main estimates 2021 and the supplementary estimates B 2021. B, at least 1 hour with the Speaker of the House of Commons and senior officials of the Parliamentary Protective Service in respect of the main estimates 2021, 2020-21, at least, or C, at least 2 hours with the Chief Electoral Officer in respect of the main estimates 2020, 2021, and D, at least 2 hours with the President of the Queen's Privy Council and the officials of the Leaders Debate Commission in respect of the main estimates 2021, 2020, 21, and the supplementary estimates B 2020, 2021. Madam Chair, one of Parliament's core functions is to exercise the power of the purse. The least the committee can do is spend a few hours before it gets approved, asking questions. And so far, as you know, we haven't done that. It is the core function of this committee to make sure that we are looking after. We are one of the biggest committee that we have in Parliament, and I believe that we should have these witnesses appear before our committee. Madam Chair, we do have a busy autumn, and this study, as we've just gone through the last couple hours, is very informative. I believe that time can be found for things which are important, which obviously the spending has been or is. The planned spending of the House is $771 million, and which has been referred to the committee for study. The House of Commons is $516 million plus $22 million. Leaders Debate Commission is up to 5.4 million. Elections Canada is 133 million. Parliamentary Protective Service is 92 million. I believe that it's imperative that that as a committee we take leadership and have these witnesses appear before. And with that, I'll ask my other colleagues if they have any questions.
Okay. I guess before we move on to questions, I just wanted to outline your motion indicates that you would like 6 hours of witness appearances?
That's correct.
Okay. So we would have to find the time for that. Me and the clerk were discussing. We are one of the rare committees that currently has a setup of 2 meetings a week. Most committees are only operating because of the lack, I guess I could say, of House resources or of tech support right now to run these meetings in a hybrid format. Most committees are only having 1 sitting a week. So we are one of a few. But despite that, I still feel like it's going to be tight because we've got about over 25 witnesses to still hear from on this study. So I don't know, would the committee be willing to add extra time at a 6:30 to 8:30 meeting in order to accommodate this? And if you guys can maybe perhaps give me your feedback as to how we make this all work so we can get it done before the November 27th deadline, and then also meet our self-imposed deadline of our study.
Madam Chair, I can speak for myself. I'll let my other colleagues speak, but I can say that we would make ourselves, I would make myself available for that.
It's possible. I mean, I'd still have to. It's not a guarantee. We'd still have to figure it out. But there are time slots from the 6:30 to 8:30 time in the evening that possibly might need to be tacked on. We could give this to the subcommittee maybe to chart it all out. That might be appropriate. What do you guys think?
If I can just weigh in real quick, I don't think it's so much a matter of our willingness to do it. I'm more concerned about the fact that we might be taking resources away from other committees if we're already meeting twice a week and other committees are forced to only meet once a week. And now we're basically saying, okay, let's add on another meeting to that. Are we, acting in a way that is fair to the other committees? So I guess that would be my concern.
Is there a speakers list?
Yes, there is a speakers list that has started now. Mr. Daniel Blakey, and then Mr. Turnbull is on it next. Mr. Blakey.
Thank you very much. So
Yeah.
I guess just a couple things.
Okay.
One is that I'm hoping that the committee might consider the option, if it is indeed an option. I'll look to the clerk for some guidance on that, of having our normal meeting time take place during the upcoming break week, which I think is not next week, but the following week. That would provide an extra 4 hours for us to be able to undertake what Mr. Doherty is proposing. And I note that if we were to spend 1 hour instead of 2 hours on each of items C and D, that would actually allow us to do those things in the break week and leave the time that we, without doing any evening meetings, which I'm not opposed to, incidentally. I think we have a lot of important work before us, and that it's really important that we have an informative and helpful report tabled in the House by the deadline that we established in the motion establishing this study. I note also that the government has tabled its report on prorogation today as well, and that that's certainly a matter that's of interest to me, and I expect will be of interest to many other members of the committee, and that is also going to have a time demand. So I definitely think, if it's possible, we should be looking to schedule at least our normal meetings during the break week. I'd be happy to try and use more of that time if other committees aren't during that week, as opposed to doing things in the evening if it's possible. But if it's not, then I'm open to having meetings in the evening. And if we could tighten up the timeline for what's in this motion, that would kind of help create more time, both for the study that we just worked on today, as well as create some time to consider the report on prorogation prior to our adjournment in December.
Perfect. That was helpful, Mr. Blakey. Maybe we'll hear from the clerk just before we continue on with the speakers list. We've got Mr. Turnbull next, then Ms. Vecchio, then Mr. Lukiski, and then Mr. Garrettson. But if we could get Justin to maybe weigh in on what the calendar looks like and what might be possible, that may assist us.
Just to inform the members of the committee for their own input, extra meetings can be had, as the chair indicated, from 6:30 to 8:30 during sitting weeks. Those slots, however, are available on a first-come, first-served basis, and some other committees have already started to avail themselves of those slots. For example, there wouldn't be any such slot available for next week. However, I'm tentatively holding 2 slots for the week after the break week, should the committee choose to have extra meetings. On the point of possibly having the committee meet next week during the break week, I'm just, as we speak, trying to ascertain whether there is the tech support available to support a committee meetings during a non-sitting week. So as soon as I do have that information, I'll mention it or I'll pass it on to the chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Turnbull.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. Good conversation. Certainly agree with the intent of this motion. I liked Mr. Blakey's attempt to try and potentially shorten C and D to 1 hour each, just in view of perhaps getting things condensed into one or more meetings. I know I was going to actually ask for clarification from Mr. Doherty around section D, where he asked for 2 hours for the President of the Queen's Privy Council and the Leaders Debate Commission, and wondered whether that was 1 hour each, which is what I had assumed when I read it, but it wasn't clear just the way that it was stated. Just also, personally, my calendar for the break week is completely booked. I couldn't have booked more things during that week. I really think it's going to be virtually impossible for me to participate in a meeting if we were to try and schedule it for that week. That doesn't mean I don't feel this is important, because I do. I think it's extremely important. But I would just caution against that. And I think all committee members are likely in a similar circumstance where they've had, now that we're sort of in a more regular schedule, which we weren't in for a long time during this pandemic, where we were doing parliamentary business that we would normally do on the Hill, as well as constituency outreach work at the same time. We've shifted to a more regular schedule, which means we're sort of counting on those constituency weeks, being available to our constituents. So that's all I would say is I think it's going to be quite difficult. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Vecchio.
Thanks very much. And just as Ryan had said, thanks very much, Daniel, for coming up with a good idea. I think there are some really good issues that we need to discuss here. I know specific to Section D, having the President of the Privy Council or President of the Queen's Privy Council, and looking at some of the things, I think it's really important that we do have that minister here, specifically with the Canada Elections Act and any amendments that we may start needing to talk about. We've sat here and talked about mail-in ballots. We just heard earlier from the health officials from BC on different options that they had available. So I think that is really important that we start having these really these conversations, that what will happen, and recognizing that there will need to be amendments made. And I'm also looking at the other things like the leaders' debates and all of those things. If we're talking about a snap election, I think it's really important that we do reflect on some of these costs and what are being put into that. And so I respect trying to make sure that we have enough time, but I do think Section D of this is really, really important, because I think that once we have the minister here, having his ear so that we make sure that we're serving all Canadians democratically would be best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lukiski.
Yeah, very quickly, most of my questions have already been dealt with, but I just wanted to say that I certainly support what Ryan had been saying in terms of availability of our own time during the break week. I know my calendar is extremely busy during that Remembrance Week. So plus the fact I don't think we're going to have the resources. I've been around long enough to know that during break weeks, the technical support is not always available. The employees who we're asking to take time out of their break week to facilitate one of our meetings is not the easiest thing in the world to do. So I think that break week is probably not an option, but I do think it is important that we take time, make time to go over the estimates. That's one of the fundamental tenets of all committee work, is to hold the government to account, to question the financial presentations. So I think we can, to speak to Daniel's suggestions, I think we can condense perhaps those 6 hours a little bit to gain more time. I also agree with Ms. Vecchio that I think it's important whenever a minister is appearing, particularly when we're talking about a report that might impact the government's decision on election planning. I would like to think that we would have, or could find, the 2 hours both for the minister and the commission to talk about election planning. But if we cut the speaker down to 1 hour, for an example, security down from the suggested time frame, it would probably work. We've done it in the past. I can tell you from experience, we haven't spent a lot of time with the speaker in the past. So if we can condense the time and find the time, let's go for it.
Okay, Mr. Garrison.
Just want to echo some of what's been said by Mr. Turnbull and Mr. Lukiski. Yeah, I don't know why we call it a break week, because it's not as though we're taking breaks. We're just completely busy with other stuff in more focus on our ridings usually. So I would agree that that's not an option. In particular, the break week of Remembrance. That includes Remembrance Day. We all have a lot of stuff that usually goes on, and now it's only complicated more by being virtual and so on. And then the only other thing that I would add is that I do agree with what Mr. Blakey's comment regarding the reduction to see if we can get this into two 2-hour slots. And I think Mr. Lukiski just hinted at the same thing. I think that might be beneficial to us so that it can be done within 2 meetings. So I'm definitely supportive of that idea.
Okay, I think the speakers list is done. I don't feel like I completely understand. So one meeting would be for the Speaker of the House of Commons, and then with him, he would have House Administration and the PPS services or PPS within one meeting. Is that correct? Okay, so that's what it is right now. Anyways, it's 1 hour each. So in 2 hours, we would be getting that done because it's stated in a way that it's just 1 hour each. So that was already kind of a given, I think already. I think where the problem lies is, can we squeeze in the C and D into one meeting? Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, I believe that the suggestion by Daniel was the 4 hours, and so what I would suggest is condensing, because we're asking for, or I'm asking for in the motion, is 2 hours with the Speaker of the House. What I would suggest then is that 1 hour with the Speaker, 1 hour with the CEO, and then 2 hours with the LeBlanc and Minister and the Commissioner.
Okay, perfect. So item C would also be 1 hour.
Correct.
Okay. And perhaps we can.
So 4 hours total. So maybe
I see 5 hours now.
No, it would be 1 hour or 4 hours, sorry. 1 hour with the Speaker of the House and senior officials. We call back the senior, or in B, we are asking for another hour with the Speaker of the House of Commons and senior officials with the protective services. But if we could get them in as well too, so that's 4, and then 1 with the Chief Electoral Officer, and then 1 with the President of the Queen's Privy Council, so 4 in total.
Okay. Okay.
I'll defer to my colleagues that are in the chamber or in the room, though, just to make sure that I got that correct. And
okay, Mr. Blakey. Oh, I think you had your hand up and then you took it down now.
Yeah, I lowered it. I was effectively going to propose what Mr. Doherty just did a very good job of articulating. Apology for the ringing phone in the background.
Okay, and
but
I
support that reconfiguration of.
And I'm just going to repeat it. So 1 hour with the Speaker and the House admin staff, and then 1 hour again, or a second hour with the Speaker and PPS. Correct?
No, I don't think that's it, Madam Chair.
Okay, just 1 hour with the Speaker. 1 hour with
1 hour
admin.
with the Speaker, who would appear both with the officials from the House of Commons administration and the officials from the PPS at the same time in that hour.
Okay.
And that the second hour of that meeting, providing that the scheduling works out, would be an hour with the Chief Electoral Officer. That would be one meeting where we do the estimates with the Chief Electoral Officer and the House and the various officials. And then the next meeting would be a 2 hour meeting as described in subsection D.
Okay. Okay.
And if I could go as far as proposing the dates, so November 17th with the CEO, November 19th with the Speaker, November 24th with LeBlanc and the Commission.
You see, now there's 3 meetings still, not 2 meetings.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
but I think what Mr. Blakey was.
An hour with the CEO on November 17th, and November 19th would be an hour. Drafting instructions for an hour, and then November 24th, 2 hours with LeBlanc and the Commissioner.
Okay.
I'm thinking that,
yes, Mr. Turnbull.
I'm sorry. I was with you when Mr. Blakey had clarified. I thought that essentially A, B, and C were being put together into one meeting where the Speaker and senior officials would take an hour, but the Speaker, Anthony Rota, would appear with senior officials from House Administration and senior officials from PPS. and then the second hour would be with the chief electoral officer. That's what I heard.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I would just say, I mean, maybe perhaps we would turn it to the analyst to tell us how long it would take for a drafting instructions. That's the only concern that maybe we would have. And again, I would leave that to the analyst.
I think there's a slight difference in what Mr. Blakey said and what Mr. Doherty said. So that's what we're realizing.
Sorry to interrupt you.
That's what I was trying to clarify. Yeah.
Yeah. So Andre, drafting, how long would drafting take since we have a deadline for this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My colleague and I, Laurence, were thinking about trying to get the bulk of the report, the draft report, written during the November 9th constituency week. We would ask for it to come back from translation for the meeting of the 19th. And any meeting held on this topic subsequent to that could be added to that draft report, if that helps.
Okay, so on the study that we're currently on, you would be writing an interim draft report.
Well, and Madam Chair, too, memory serves me correct, the Chief Electoral Officer did say that he would come back on the pandemic election study. So that could be covered off as well, too, on the same day that he's here on estimates.
I still think it might be better rather than having 3 meetings, even if we have to extend the time for one of the meetings, to still accommodate all the hours that you're requesting, but to have it one 3-hour meeting instead of, having 3 meetings. I think it would be more efficient still because it leaves us a time slot to go back to our other study. How do you guys feel about doing it that way? Having a 3-hour meeting and then having a 2-hour meeting?
I personally am okay with that. I'll defer to my colleagues that are in the room as well, too.
I think it might be better than having 3 meetings, and we're focused on the sub-estimate or the estimates, the main estimates,
Madam Chair,
rather than going back and forth.
Madam Chair, I'm fine with that, dependent upon, of course, being able to find the time and the room, and that's always the concern. So if we can ask our clerk to verify that in a perfect world, if we had one 3-hour meeting and another 2-hour meeting, and we have the facilities to accommodate that, I have no problems, but let's ask the clerk to determine whether that's possible.
And it might be easier than having an evening meeting as well.
Madam Chair, I thank Mr. Lakiski for raising that, because that is, in fact, a consideration to see if there is the available support for our usual block to go from 2 to 3. So it is something that I would have to look into. And that might be a variable that could determine if the committee could, in fact, meet for a full 3 hours or not.
And perhaps we can try to tack on an hour. Now this is, I guess, contingent upon Mr. Doherty, Ms. Petty-Taylor, those that are on the coast. You have a very different time that you're dealing with. If you'd be okay with starting at 10. Because I know right now all committees are starting at 11, generally speaking, that if we were to start and go from 10 to 1.
Madam Chair, I was in my office at 4:30 this morning, so I have no problem.
Nor do I, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Not normal.
Madam Chair, it's Justin. It's Justin, the clerk again.
Would that work?
In fact, it's probably easier to try to get an extra hour at the end of the meeting than before the meeting. So one thing I could probably say is that before the meeting would be much more difficult to get than after the extra hour.
Thank you, Justin.
Okay, thank
you.
No
problem.
Madam Chair, if I may, what I'm sensing is that we have some pretty good agreement on what it is we want to do. There's some extant questions about scheduling. So I'm just wondering, in order to kind of codify what I take to be a consensus, but of course we can test the will of the committee, I would move that we amend the motion on the floor so that section A reads at least 1 hour with the Speaker of the House of Commons and senior officials of the House of Commons administration and senior officials of the Parliamentary Protective Service in respect of the main estimates 2020-2021 and the supplementary estimates B, that we delete section B and amend section C to read at least 1 hour with the Chief Electoral Officer in respect of the main estimates 2020-2021. I think that reflects the substance of what it is that we want to do and provides the maximum amount of flexibility so that things can be scheduled appropriately as the clerk receives more information about what is possible. So I would like to move that amendment to Mr. Doherty's motion.
Okay, now that would only require 2 meetings of regular 2-hour slots then.
Well, it would require 1 hour with the speaker and senior officials. It would require 1 hour with the chief electoral officer, and it would require 2 hours with the president of the Queen's Privy Council. It's agnostic as to whether that happens over 2 meetings or 3 meetings or whatever. So yeah. all that the motion would do is say how much time we want to spend with who, and then allow the maximum and by when, but allow for the maximum amount of flexibility to be able to figure out scheduling as we get more information on what's technically possible from the
Madam Chair,
House of Commons administration.
Madam Chair, I'm okay with that amendment.
Okay, we've got Monsieur Terrien, who's had his hands up for quite some time, then Ms. Vecchio, then Mr. Turnbull.
I just want to make sure I understand. So we're not going, is it that we're not going to have a 3-hour-long meeting? No, it doesn't exclude the possibility of having a 3-hour meeting. It's rather that we want to know how many meetings we're going to have. We don't necessarily know how long it can be, but we do want to have the maximum amount of flexibility possible. We just don't know what the technical restrictions will be. Once we do know what those restrictions are, then the clerk and the chair will be able to help us with the scheduling. Thank you. Then, ideally, if there were going to be a 3-hour meeting, I would prefer 10 to 1. If that's impossible, then I will work with what the committee decides. But if you were to give me the choice, that's what I would do. I will be flexible, though.
It's easier for most of us with question period there and sometimes needing to prepare and all of that. It's very tough, especially for House leaders like yourself, to be ready for QP. Okay, we've got Ms. Vecchio.
Thanks very much. And I'm really glad with this amended motion. I was just wondering if we could go ahead and focus on the amended motion, have it passed, and then take it to subcommittee for the planning on, and just make sure that each party has a representative to discuss the ins and outs on the timing when it comes to scheduling this.
Fantastic. Thank you. Mr. Turnbull.
Yep. I just wanted to ask one small point of clarification. I totally agree with the amendment, and I think we're reaching consensus on this, which is great. Just wanted to ask realistically from the analyst, we committed to another timeline for an interim report, and now we're committing to fitting in these meetings into the schedule. And I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to impact our ability to essentially fulfill our other commitment with the interim report that we committed to. I think the date was early December, so I'm just conscious of that. With this motion having a very specific commitment to November 27th, just wondered whether we needed any added flexibility there just to fit it in. Thanks.
Andre? I think Andre is saying that he's going to start working during this constituency week on that draft report for the COVID election study.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a lot to add to that. I will give my assurances to the committee on behalf of my colleague and I that we'll do everything possible to meet that deadline of December 1st for the interim report on the COVID election study.
Okay, so let's put the amendment to a vote, I guess, if needed, unless there's consensus, and then we could punt this to a subcommittee, and me and the clerk will try to schedule a date for the subcommittee.
Madam Chair, sorry to interrupt you. Sorry to interrupt you. It's just to inform the committee. The committee can still have subcommittee meetings, but based on the schedule of meetings that the whips have agreed to with the House administration, those subcommittee meetings must take place during our regular committee block. So unlike when we're operating in usual circumstances and we could schedule a subcommittee meeting around our usual committee meetings, we don't have, unfortunately, that flexibility. So if there was an appetite to have a subcommittee meeting, we would have to take all of a regular committee slot or a portion of that regular committee slot. And for next week coming up, we do have the witnesses already scheduled for our two meetings next week. If I can suggest, though, maybe at the end of one of those meetings, there can be another similar type brief discussion, such as the one that you're having right now, and we can go over the plan. That would give me time to kind of see what the technical capacity is in terms of support that can be provided to the committee to have an extra, 2 extra 3-hour meetings on the week coming back from the non-sitting week.
Okay, we can tack on a half an hour subcommittee time maybe, where all the other members can be dismissed and the subcommittee members can remain back just to iron out the details. Or if we don't end up having, but I think we can find that time because we've been able to do so well this time. So let's just go with that rather than putting it all on me and then trying to call everybody to see if there's agreement. So let's vote on the amendment, and then we'll tack on a half an hour subcommittee at one of the next meetings, at the next meeting.
Was it deemed friendly so that we could maybe just move on to the main motion with the amendment?
Yes, okay, it looks like there's consensus. So all in favor of passing the amended motion? Okay, seems like everyone is in favor. All right, so it is passed, and I will see you all on Tuesday, the 3rd of November. I hope you all have a great Halloween. I know nobody's going to be able to really partake in the festivities in the usual way. And happy birthday to Dr. Duncan in advance. Just heard today that she's a Halloween baby. So happy birthday to you. I hope you have a good day that day.
Happy
Take care,
birthday.
everyone.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.